Hi, on a webinar of this size, scale, and with people logging in from different parts of the world with different time zones, it's confusing how to wish. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, irrespective of whether you're getting into your pajamas or getting out of them. I'm Naushad Panjwani, Regional President of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, President of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, and an old and once active member of British Business Group Mumbai. I welcome you all on behalf of all the three host organizations. While Cyrus gets the exciting job of introducing the interesting panelists today, I get to introduce the three oldest organizations in their respective fields. British Business Group, Mumbai, headed by the dynamic chairman, Mr. Surendra Rocha, and the able manager, Ms. Rekha Menon, is a first port of call for those based in Mumbai and looking at doing business in the Indo-UK corridor. Their events are full of knowledge, network, and fun. Bombay Chartered Accountants Society is the oldest and largest voluntary organization of chartered accountants in the country for sure, and I suspect probably in the world too. It is a principle-centered and learning-oriented organization promoting quality service and excellence in the profession. My dear friend Manish Sampath, the current president of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, is there with us and will address us later during the session. Finally, the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, of which I am the current regional president West, is the only apex bilateral chamber energizing India-US economic engagement. Our relationships with the various states of United States of America, combined with our extensive network of numerous chambers of commerce across USA, makes us an attractive first port of call for all large as well as medium-sized companies looking to doing business in the Indo-US corridor. Before I hand over to Cyrus, I'd like to place on record our appreciation to our knowledge partner for today's event, LawQuest, which is a leading law firm headquartered in Mumbai and is very well known for its global immigration and employment law practices. Cyrus, the show is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naushad. Thank you so much. You set the bar very high now. I just want to quickly mention the name of this entire event, because without a name, you can't have anything. I mean, our country's name is, for example, that, otherwise you don't know where to go. The name of the show is The Global War for Talent in a Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, but apparently he's not involved because he's dead. But who is involved is a ton of great people, all academics. And the question you might ask is, if we have academics on a show like this, brilliant intellectuals, people who can see the future, who want to move us in shakers, who will change the world, or hopefully heal the world, why me with that panel? Well, it's obvious, because we're looking at global talent and we're going to try to save that global talent and harness it back and give it back its energy, etc., and space it out all over the world correctly. And while we do that, we have to look at the other end of the spectrum, the lack of talent, which is where I come in. So I'm trying to make sure we have a balance. We have that paradox in mind. Science teaches us that relativity is everything. You've got to look from one end to the other end to understand everything and put it in perspective. And hence, thank you for choosing me. Poorvi, who I'm going to now introduce with a lot of fanfare. Before I do that, a quick word. My name is Cyrus Broacha. I'd like to just talk about myself because after this I can't. I'm 5'8". I weigh 91 kilos. I'm probably male and I'm right-handed. And I'm very happy to be here because during lockdown, as you all know, we do have a little more time than normal. Might even be classically conditioned to enjoy this sometime. I'm worried about that. We'll talk about that as well. Quickly, just point out our speakers for today, all big guns, all earning in 9 figures or less for now. We have Gyan Nagpal, of course, who's a talent strategist and a writer, and we hail from the same school. I do remember, 25, 27 years ago when he stole my lunch for the first time, but we still have a good relationship. Bhaskar Bhat, who heads Star and was a titan, so to speak, which we'll talk about when we introduce him properly again. And Poorvi Chothani, who's put this whole thing together. And I would like to spend a lot of time talking about her, but I would also like to mention our other soldier, agreed to come. In fact, he called me up and said, Cyrus, I haven't been in the news for some time, so can I attend this event? I speak of Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who, by the way, is not a medical doctor from what I gather. So if you're injured, don't call him. He's not going to be able to help you at any point. All right, so he's going to be our special act a little later in the program. But first, this lovely lady, Poorvi Chothani, has got a fantastic bio. I mean, it's like 17,000 pages. The whole event would end before I reach like page 4. But she's the managing partner of Law Quest. She's brought together all of us today, and so we are grateful for that because Friday evening, 7 o'clock, my social life has come to a standstill, and now I have all these colorful people to look at, and hopefully other people are looking at us. So it's back like the Bombay Gym for me. She is the immediate past president of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, is a legal professional licensed in India, the US, and the UK. And she's the one, the brains behind all this. And Puri, want to give you a top up here. The last time we met about 10 years ago, you made me enter into a crab race, a 40-year-old male on all fours, tied to another male on all fours, running around. So, from where to where, your work, covers the entire gamut. So I thank you for bringing me here. And of course, I'll be talking a lot of rubbish and well, brevity is necessary, I suppose. But we are going to look at this as a very serious issue because suddenly this COVID world will end. And Poorvi, if you can come and just say a few words and tell us why we're discussing this topic, while I scratch myself behind my head. Poorvi.
Thank you, Cyrus. I'd also like to thank all the three organizations who are supporting us today, and especially Naushad, who helped bring the three organizations together. So today, why are we here? We're going to discuss the biggest disruptor that any of us has witnessed so far, and I hope we don't witness another one like this. This has disrupted our lives, our business, the way we present at conferences, the way we socialize and everything. I've been playing housey and treasure hunts on the internet. It's been fun, but it's really affecting business. So that's what we are going to discuss now. But in the meantime, there have been a lot of crises affecting people who are working abroad, people from abroad who are working in India, etc. And the immigration crisis that we saw within our country, the migrant workers. So how is this going to pan out? In countries where there is a flattening of cases or there's a reduction in cases, their focus has already changed. For example, in the United States, everyone is busy discussing George Floyd, the atrocities, and discussing the riots and the silent protests. Unfortunately, all these things are serious, but they have a fleeting memory in people's lives. So I'm worried that after the COVID-19 situation has passed, we'll become complacent like the rioters. None of them is maintaining social distancing. So I just think we should pause and think about how we are going to move our people around for work. So that's why we are all here today. The common thread is people movement and people in the workforce. Cyrus.
All right, Poorvi, are you ready to take the chair, so to speak?
You can fire away.
Will. And let me just go on record here. I am the son of a lawyer, a grandson of a lawyer, and the great grandson of a lawyer. So I cannot lie. None of these questions have been sent by Poorvi to me for Poorvi, because that would not be right. Right, Poorvi? I've got them all from several years of research that I've done on the subject. But let's start. We'll open the battle with this question. Now, you're an immigration attorney, Poorvi. Your legal practice depends on the movement of people, obviously. Now, we're seeing nations closing doors against foreign workers in many ways, some temporarily, but obviously some will be more long-standing. Which country is still open for immigrants, in your opinion? And do you see that changing soon, a more flexible approach?
So just now there is a temporary suspension of foreign travel to most countries, unless you are a citizen of that country or you have special circumstances that merit your presence in that country. But all in all, Canada is still open for immigration. It's the most open country in India, in the world, in the developed world. So Canada is still a very attractive destination. But countries like Germany, France, the United States, all of them are making noises that they're going to clamp down on foreign workers in their jurisdictions. So it's a bit alarming. Even for the business travelers, the Schengen visa is currently suspended. So we'll talk about that later with Mr. Tharoor. But yeah, this is the situation just now in the world. Even India has stopped the arrival of foreigners, though just yesterday they have relaxed it for high-level scientists and technicians to come and resolve emergency problems, etc., if there are any. So that's good because we have a client who had a gas leak in one of their plants and their technicians couldn't fly in to fix it, but now they can.
Right. So you're saying Canada at the moment is a little flexible and has not become very hard-grained as most of the nations around us. But what
Absolutely.
about North Korea? North Korea is pretty open to
I
migration.
said the developed world.
We don't know. Nobody knows what's going on there. All right, next question. Which country has taken the toughest measures against immigration? And is there such a country? And are these, in your opinion, permanent sort of restrictions?
So I think I addressed the question in the earlier one, but I would say that the countries that are going to most affect Indians and our Indian economy, I'd like to speak about those, are the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, some of the continental European countries. So these are the ones that are going to have a devastating effect on us if they clamp down hard. At the moment, they haven't made any permanent decisions, but there is a lot of conjecture and a lot of threatening announcements, especially from President Trump. Every 20 days, he's saying he's coming out with something new in the next 30 days. So we are watching.
But he's personally working on a cure for the virus. You have to thank him for that. So what would this mean for IT companies? I mean, we're the world's famous IT import-export sort of market. What's going to happen if we can't go to Germany and Australia and America and
Sure.
UK?
So I'm going to sort of add a little bit to that question. So I want to say that in two parts. Is President Trump going to be re-elected? And if he is, what does that mean to immigration? And what does it mean to the IT companies across the world, irrespective of his re-election? So first of all, is Trump going to get re-elected? Oh my God, even the best predictors don't know that. But if you want to put your money on it, he's going to win. The betting institutes are giving you odds that he's going to win. But if you want to listen to economists who study unemployment and the effect of prices on GDP, etc., they say he's going to lose and will barely garner 35% of the popular vote. So it's very hard to predict. But if he does get re-elected, I think that he will clamp down, especially on the temporary worker programs. And one of them is the H-1B program. Now, the Indian IT companies, many of our leading stars have got 70% of their revenue coming in from the United States. Now, the number may vary depending on whom you're talking to. But if he clamps down on the H-1B program, many of our Indian businesses, IT businesses, will have to rethink their model because they won't be able to send temporary workers over there. There's a lot of negative image about the program. However, a lot of it is nonsense. There is economic data to show that this program actually benefits American businesses and the American economy. But the vote bank in America does not recognize this. They only listen to and recognize what President Trump says, especially in the rural areas of America.
So just a quick word as one legal luminary to another. Gambling is illegal in India, so I don't think we should discuss betting ever again in this event.
The moment Vistara has a flight out of India, go out and bet.
All right. And where will you keep your money? They don't let us into their country. Let's get this. This is a segue from the last question, which I interrupted with my stupid points. Is it possible that we could have a world where visas as a concept become redundant? Is that a possibility in the future?
Now, if I was thinking of the well-being of business, I would say yes, that would be really nice if you could do away with visas. But if you're talking about my legal practice, I don't want them to ever go away. What will I do after that? But I can't see that there will be such a drastic change ever. Countries are definitely going to be protected because human beings are not rational. I mean, if any country just opened up the gates, there'd be a flood of people moving there, just like water. They'll just sort of land up there. But I do think that there is a possibility and there is a hope that there would be special visa categories carved out for people in the healthcare sector, people in the information technology sector, all these people who just need to temporarily go into countries and help out with certain projects or certain implementations. Or in this instance, the healthcare workers need to be in high concentration areas of COVID-19 to help address the crisis. So yes, in an ideal world, I would love some special visa categories, but visa-less world, I don't think it's happening.
So what you're saying is it's more like a T20 visa situation and no longer will there be test match visas available. I like to use metaphors and confuse people. Just one more quick question, again, leading from that. What, according to you, would be an ideal world situation in terms of visas and work permits? I mean, you sort of answered it, but
Yeah.
I mean, would there be an ideal sort of time period?
So, I mean, just now for the next 18 to 24 months, I think we're going to see a lot of uncertainty and a lot of changes. But after that, things should settle down. Many of the countries have got it down well, especially countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United Kingdom, all of which have a points-based system and a very predictable system. In an ideal world, I would love more countries to have such a predictable system and not a system in which legal arguments can swing the decision of the officers, though that works well for us.
All right, Poorvi, let me ask you a very serious question to wrap up your section. Who's your favorite Bollywood actor?
Oh my goodness.
All kinds of people watching.
Singh.
Got to keep it going. Oh, all right. It's very interesting. Are we ready for our next?
Sorry, even these performing actors, I don't know if you do shows abroad, but all of them are going to be affected by COVID-19. All of them at this time of the year would be in North America preparing for some fantastic shows, but none of them can travel. So I'm sure they're also facing a devastation in their business and income just now.
Oh, what about shooting? The shooting abroad is like 60% of films, cinema scenes, but that's gone for a while, as you say. Shall we introduce Gyan Nagpal, who's been waiting very patiently from 4 o'clock in the evening, having got the time wrong. Gyan, if I can just speak about it for a minute, is a multi-award-winning expert on talent strategy who is deeply invested in decoding the changing talent dynamics across the world and researching ongoing changes to the global talent pool. In layman's language, he basically can get you a better job and tell you how to get better in life. Gyan is the creator of the People Lens, a radical new approach to developing a globally relevant talent strategy, and author of 2 books, Talent Economics and the Future Ready Organization, both of which I have read simultaneously to challenge myself, Gyan. A pleasure having you. And lots of questions. Poorvi is going to kick them off. Some serious, some stupid. You can guess who's doing what. So Gyan, over to Poorvi with question number 1.
Okay. So, Gyan, it's been a pleasure. We've known you for several years, and you've been supportive of our Global Mobility Handbook that we publish every other year. And even this year, you've agreed to write the foreword for us. So it's been really a pleasure. And what you research and what the data you come out with and the statistics you come out with are amazing. Because you, especially in your first book, were able to predict where people are going to need workers and where the workers will come from. But in your latest book, the one about future-ready organizations, you speak about dynamic capability management as an advantage. So this is being stretched to its limit. What people changes do you see coming in addition to remote working? Do you see anything more, anything different?
Yeah. Okay. Firstly, thank you, Poorvi. It's such a pleasure to see Cyrus. Using technology after 25, 30 years. And I promise to buy you that lunch and return it, Cyrus, when we meet next. So,
all right.
Poorvi, to your question, I think, I'd like to dial it up a little bit. And there are 2 things that come to mind. The first is that we're seeing a fundamental shift in the concept of work itself. Right. And increasingly, and this is not because of the pandemic, this isn't, something that started 3 or 5 years ago. It's been on for the last 20 years. What we're seeing is that the work being done is increasingly disconnected from where it is being done and also now who is doing it because of technology intermediation. So suddenly, you have 25 million freelancers who are suddenly available to anyone around the world with a credit card. Now, that was unprecedented. You couldn't imagine that you'd have access to this contingent workflow force. And in my book, I call it the human cloud, right? So we have the data cloud, but we also have a human cloud. And it's this recipe that organizations will use, the mix of data, machine intelligence, and human capability to power the future. So I think the first thing is the very concept of work is changing. Right? It isn't the way we've thought about work when I started my career or, even 10 years ago. The second one, which I think is a little more personal to all of us and a little close to home, is that the very concept of employment is changing. So in the 20th century, if you look back at the last maybe 200 years, but in the 20th century that we experienced at the start of our careers, Employment was essentially an exchange of time for money, right? You gave up 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week, and you get paid a monthly salary and quarterly incentive, annual bonus, and so on. And increasingly, that's not the case anymore. You're not paying people to turn up anymore. You're not paying people to come and sit in an office. So it's no longer an exchange of time for money. So what will it be? And my hypothesis and the research that we've been doing says that it will become a much clearer value exchange. You create value and you receive some of that value in exchange. And therefore, all of us, that have an employment mindset have to start thinking about, how do we monetize our skills? How do we monetize our capability? And in a nutshell, that's what dynamic capability management will enable, both in the concept of work and labor or talent.
Gyan, Poorvi, one sec before you go into the second question, the follow-up question, sorry. Just a quick word on how people at the end of the show can actually get in touch with Dr. Tharoor and all of us, all the panels, and ask their questions. So we have a number. You can WhatsApp to this number. It'll be flashing at points. 7899251181 is the number, I think. 7899251181. Is that right? Poorvi, can you just double check?
I'm getting the number. You can go ahead with your next question, Cyrus. Or is it mine? Yeah, I'm going to ask him. I want to ask him this question.
All right. Go ahead.
So Naushad, in connection with what Gyan, in connection with what you already said, you've frequently spoken about the supply side of talent and the demand from nations. So as the world adopted to working remotely, you already answered that, the way we are working is changing. So do you see that visas might become redundant? Do you see that all those H-1B workers who keep flying to America to work could probably do it sitting at home? If they can sit at home and work within the United States, then why can't they sit at home and work from India? Though it will be in a different time zone. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great question, Poorvi. And I wish the world was as simple as that it was a switch that you can switch on and off. Unfortunately, it isn't. Again, let me just, rewind on a trend and then extrapolate it forward. So let's say 20 years ago, in 2000, 2002, right? What I call the golden age of talent mobility. It was a time when global workforce movement was compounding at almost 25%, and this is skilled labor, moving across the world at 25% year on year. There was a patch which really powered, in some ways, the global connectivity and labor movements that we become quite reliant on. Now, if you come forward to today, right? So let's look at where we are today. The fundamental difference is that in the pre-internet era, talent was mobile, and talent has been mobile forever. In the post-internet era, for the first time, even the job is mobile. So now these are the two competing forces. You can have talent mobility, but the counterpoint is also job mobility. And sometimes it's easier to move the job to the people who can do it economically. Someone's willing to do it faster, cheaper, more efficiently. The job moves. That's the nature of demand and supply. So the first, I think, way to answer your question is there's definitely two competing forces, right? Talent mobility is not going to go away. Job mobility is here to stay, and they're going to continuously fight and sort of try and eat each other's lunch like Cyrus and me used to. Now, there's a second view on this, on the talent mobility stuff specifically. And I suggest, let's use an example. Let's use an industry example. So let's think of education, right? It's all of us went to school and college. Now, there are some subjects like mathematics, which, even a professor sitting in Hungary over a screen like this can teach some basic mathematics to students on the other side. It doesn't matter. It's a simple, repetitive, algorithmic subject. But you tell me if you can teach history. Would I want to learn Indian history from a teacher sitting in the UK? And I think in that analogy is hidden, where we will see this go. So in high context environments, like history, where you need to understand the lay of the ground of the land. You need to understand, the psyche and the mindset of people. We will always have talent mobility. We will always have people moving, across boundaries to research, to learn, to contribute. But in other more commoditized and algorithmic jobs, the job itself will move. So we won't need as many mathematics teachers. We can have 5 or 6 really great guys with fantastic digital tools and simulations teach the subject sometimes better than a person standing in front of our kids.
Sure.
Poorvi, just quickly, you mentioned working in India for America, staying at home. But didn't we try that? Wasn't it called call centers? I think we tried that. Didn't work out.
You are right, but now more of the sophisticated parts are being shipped out. So Cyrus, you were asking me what is the number people can send their questions to. It's a WhatsApp number, and the number is 7899251181. That's 7899251181.
Yeah. So keep those questions coming. At the end, I think the panelists will all be together with Dr. Shashi Tharoor, and we'll answer anything, including cooking of your choice. Not a problem. But going back to Gyan and slightly more serious note, Gyan, as you know, work has dried up for me sitting here doing nothing. So I've started driving an Uber as of today because that's allowed Maharashtra government. Well, Uber and Airbnb's business successes were attributed to their disruptive business models. We're seeing the biggest global economic disruption ever witnessed, with no precedent for this ever. So what people strategies should companies consider from talent acquisition and retention perspective, Mr. Nagpal?
Okay. Oh, it's a big question. But before we go there, I think there are 1,000 girls out there booking Uber rides right now, hoping they get Cyrus driving them.
Gyan. Gyan, you're giving Gyan again. This is Gyan. Don't do that. I wish.
Okay.
I wish. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So listen, people strategies, right? I think the biggest disruption, and this is something that started a while back, is that we've got to stop thinking of organizations as pyramids. Right? The traditional thinking is, there's a person on top and there's this whole organization underneath. That was an industrial model. That's how we organized people. That's how we used capability in the industrial world. In the digital environment, and particularly when you're, sort of all over the world and you're using technology like we are, I prefer the analogy that my friend Julian Stott in the UK uses, where he calls it scaffolded organizations. He calls it scaffolded organizations and social spaces. And this itself is a social space, right? It's such an efficient way for all of us to have this great conversation without wasting, days getting on a plane or trying to get there. So the first is, we really have to change the way we imagine the organization, because if you imagine it like a pyramid, then you're going to talk about flattening the organization, all of those very pyramidical concepts. And scaffolded organizations are more organic. They're less structured, but they're great fun, and people gravitate to the work they like doing. They bring their capability to a platform. The organization is the platform for capability, attracts the right talent, and then creates value for everyone. The second big people strategy is that we now have many sources of capability available. So in my book, I talk about 10 core sources of capability that modern business has access to. And within these 10, we all use a certain recipe of it. Internal, external, networks, alliances, JVs, M&A. We've got so many ways to access capability in the modern world. And I remember when I started in this field, the common refrain was, we either buy talent or we build talent. And in reality today, we can buy talent, we can build talent, we can borrow talent, or we can bot talent. It's increasingly even going to bot. So it's buy, build, borrow, or bot. That's the fundamental choice we have today when we're thinking about, where should work be done and how should work be done.
Okay, so talent shouldn't panic. You're finding ways to keep talent in the pool. We'll talk about Mr. N.G. Subramaniam, the CEO of TCS, for a second, because he's gone on record to say that by 2025, TCS will only have 25% of their workforce in offices, in land offices. When you wrote the book on future-ready organizations, did you ever dream that this could be a reality? I think you mentioned something similar.
Yeah, but not so fast. I must confess, this crisis, for all the pain, it also pushes us out of inertia sometimes. And someone said that, I can't remember who, never waste a good crisis. And I think human inertia is a huge enemy of progress, and it's going to force us to think differently. It's going to force us to behave differently. But to your question, I think what I like about TCS, what I like about even, I think Rajesh, Gopinathan also said this afterwards, that we're committed to only a small fraction being in the office. Employees can only come in 25% of the time, and they're effective. What I like about TCS is that they're coherent, they're clear. It doesn't matter what your choices are, as long as you can make it work. It's not good to have fashionable choices that you don't put your heart behind, you don't put your culture behind, and therefore you don't enable. You don't have the right practices and policies to make successful. But on the other side, you spoke of a spectrum earlier. We have Salil Parekh at Infosys, who says that we don't want to work virtually. We want our people in. And Salil's logic is also very sound, where he says, look, the reason why we are successful in the pandemic is because people have built a lot of social capital before, and we're dipping into that social capital. We know our colleagues, so we can work off a screen. But in the future, you hire a new employee, they never enter an office, they work with people on a screen. Will they really feel the same way? Will they be sticky enough? So on and so forth. So I don't know who's right. I think both are right, as long as they've got a reasonably sound framework to engineer their organizations to be successful using these key choices that they are making. And I think the truth, like always happens, the truth is somewhere in between, but you can live on both poles of the spectrum.
All right. Gyan, will you just hang in there for a little while, because we're now going to put the focus on Bhaskar Bhat, who's been sitting patiently. I hope he's sitting. I can't tell from here. Posture is always a difficult thing. So we'll get him in and let him have his say. Thank you from him as well. Thank you, Gyan. Stay with us, because you're there at the end of the program as well. Bhaskar Bhat, the man behind Titan's success, and may I say I'm a proud wearer of Titan watch. Sometimes that's all I wear. As described by Forbes magazine, is the current chairman of Vistara Airlines, a leading citizen of India, and a man with a conscience, as seen by the recent work that he has done. I think he deserves a round of applause for the work he did personally with migrants affected by the lockdown in his home city of Bengaluru. Vistara is set to be another success story under his able leadership, and we're delighted to have the options to travel by Vistara, and for me, gratis, which I thank you so much. Really,
hey, they didn't tell me that.
And I'm not even a migrant, not yet.
Nobody told me that. Wait. Thank you.
Just check the memo. The problem with 25% workforce coming in, nobody knows what's happening.
Mr. Bhat, it was in the fine print. It was in the fine print. You didn't see that. All of us.
My lawyer speak it. Let's speak it. Poorvi, you can kick off here with the first question on the aviation industry. Yeah.
Right. So I think that the aviation industry and the tourism industry are the ones that have really taken a hard hit. After we saw the terrorist attacks in the hotels in Mumbai, we saw how hotels changed their behavior. The hotels were behaving different. Everybody who was going into those hotels was behaving different. I grew up in an era where going out for a nice meal was a walk into the Shamiana, and you could get in and out within minutes and yet have a nice meal. But now you've got to think, am I going to be able to get parking? Will my car be allowed inside the gate? So many things have changed. So in aviation also, we are anticipating such changes would come. What, according to you, Mr. Bhat, would work in the future?
Good question. And everybody is trying to answer this question in their own way. And it's not just the
answers.
It's not just the answer. What you do matters. So let me start by comparing, that 26/11 attack. And, there is a theory, or rather something I believe in, which is from science, that's called hysteresis. Materials, remember, there is a memory in materials. They go back to an average. Some things change and many things remain the same. So if I were to take the customer angle of that 26/11 attack, or tsunami and the earthquakes and so many things that have happened, just reflect back 100 days back. On media, we were talking about CAA. Do you remember? We were talking only about CAA, and now we are talking about COVID. So a public memory is like that. Now, all I'm saying is, as Indians, we love to do so many things. One is entertain, be entertained, and eat out. So if I were to take the hotel industry example, it will be driven by the consumer wanting to get back. But travel is not like that. I mean, aviation, there is a fear, doubt, uncertainty, and fear is what is stopping right now people from traveling. Now, if I were to take what has happened in the last 10 days in India, I'm talking about only India right now. The Civil Aviation Ministry, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the airlines, the airports, everybody got together, wanting, of course, for commercial reasons, wanting to fly again. But do you know, to keep an aircraft on the ground, it costs a couple of crores, And but more than that, the first impulse, seeing all those, terrible pictures of migrant labor walking, etc., we had to provide a service to travel. But getting together and ensuring that travel by air was safe, it is today the safest way to travel from point A to point B. Now, point A to point B is not like that. Obviously, you have to have at least the length of the aircraft that you have to travel, at least that much. So long distance travel, because of three things. One is the measures that have been put in at the airport. As you enter, no touch. There is no touch, including the frisking, etc., by the CRPF and so on, all over. No boarding card in your hand, only a digital boarding card. And inside the aircraft, we have all three seats full, but you got safety, the mask, and there is a plastic shield in front of you. No water, no food. A lot of care has been taken. So I would say, right now, well, the people who took the risk and flew are subject to significant inconvenience, but the loads are like 50 and 60%. We thought it would be 25%. Okay, so we are surprised by the people's desire to travel. So I won't be surprised if there are many surprises coming up in travel. But the first thing to do is to remove the fear out of travel. And that, I think, a lot of work has been done. And I can assure you that I went to the airport myself, saw the aircraft from inside. It's not pleasurable, because once you land again, there are quarantine, this, that, etc., etc. There's uncertainty, but there's a fair amount traveling.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may, your competitor, who is somewhat deceased now, also from Bengaluru, he had a very good incentive, which I enjoyed a lot. He would give out this Kingfisher calendar, if you remember, to people, and that would encourage them to board.
Correct.
And sometimes they wouldn't leave the aircraft because they'd be stuck on Miss November. I'm sure you guys will come up with creative stuff.
Yeah, but, so you have to remember that you have to date. It was about the dating, not about the date in the calendar.
Fair enough. But with all these adjustments that you guys are making, obviously everything's going to get more expensive. Someone has to bear the cost. Do you think that you will go back to the old normal and just pay whatever it takes to fly? You think that's what's going to happen?
The well-kept secret about flying is the crude oil prices have come down. Therefore, aviation fuel prices have come down. It's like the jewelry business. The entire benefit is passed on to the customer. We are very, we're very philanthropist in our entire approach. It is like almost like not for profit. We are not for profit. We are a service kind of thing. Anyway, jokes apart, the flying, the cost of flying versus the price of flying. Incidentally, just to give you some number, it costs. You pay only 5 rupees per kilometer, per seat kilometer, whereas you pay 18 rupees to that taxi wala, no, per kilometer. Yeah. It is only 5 rupees. Can you imagine that? So actually, flying is not only safe, it is also cheaper. And
but Vishnu won't fly me from Malba Hill to Marine Drive.
That's the problem. At least the length of the aircraft we have to fly. So anyway, the point is your question about, that it is going to be more expensive, but India has, much like telecom, aviation has also become very competitive, and it is about customer and Indians, and therefore it's a service, and it's going to settle at a level where if companies can't make money, well, it's the exit for them, like you said, but you have to figure out how to make money. So branding is going to come, but the opportunity is huge. Indians from Kota to Bhubaneswar to Guwahati to Jorhat to, apart from the big cities, people are just wanting to fly, and they want, it's thodi shaan bhi hai, flying means. Do you know that when you bought a ticket, you think you own the airline, and you go and shout at that girl behind the counter. When you go by train, nothing, you'll accept everything. 3 hours late, wo to aise hi hota hai, so people behave differently also. And so I think people are going to enjoy flying. And the prices are not going to be hitting the roof. We are the lowest, much like telecom, we are the lowest per kilometer price in the country. And that's going to explode the market. Yeah, sorry.
And Mr. Bhat, for this panel, I'm sure you'll give us a little bit of rebate and discounts or what have you.
If you show me all the people on the panel,
So, Mr. Bhat, I had a related question. So you said that, yes, we are the cheapest, etc. But Vistara is a premium airline.
Yeah.
And, we do have the other budget airlines. So I don't know how they are going to manage their safety, etc. I'm sure even they must be working hard on it. But do you think your changes will increase the costs that the middle class will be, will find it difficult to fly? All your safety measures will add expenses?
Yeah, it's somewhat related to the previous question. Yes, the costs have risen. And I must tell you that it is as safe to fly Indigo or SpiceJet or AirAsia as it is to fly Vistara. There is no difference. It is the entire industry that got together and said, we must make flying safe. So it's going to cost them as much and cost Vistara. On the premiumness of Vistara, I think the image of Vistara is premium, but no Indian. I came from an industry where, there was one product which adorns your wrist, where just the myth, you pay the premium for the myth, although that a brand which starts with R, it is 60 times less accurate than a Titan watch, but you'll still pay 10 lakhs for it. It is the story, because Roger Federer, sports it or whatever. Now, that is the difference. If I were to take Vistara, it is the images of premiumness, but the price is, we are maybe 5-7% more expensive than and sometimes we are equal. The whole pricing strategy is based on filling the plane. And I'm glad we have a premium image. I think more and more in aviation, unlike, or maybe in other categories as well, people will pay premium for authentic value, which is, let's say, safety and things like that in flying. Similarly, in automobiles, it will be for not just for the brand name, it will be for the engineering, and it will be for the fuel consumption and green, etc., etc. So the premium, the branding and the premium, the story on premium is going to change, I think, post-COVID. People are going to get more careful, and Indians were always careful. Nobody pays. How much bargaining all of you do, no? When you bhaji kharidega, to kitna bargaining karta hai yaar. 2 rupeya kam karna. So we are very good bargainers, and nobody pays a premium. Tanishq brand is like that. It's very high end in terms of image, but it is still, you pay for the per gram of gold on the same rate as the others. Sorry.
We are promoting every brand under the family. I'll have to give another half an hour just for that. But can we personalize the next question a little bit? Because I'm sure as a head of industry, people would love to know whether you personally I'm sure you'll have to say it politically correct thing to say. Would you like to fly? Would you want to fly right now? And if you did, what would you like to see in terms of the aeroplane culture and what's going on when you fly?
Yeah, there is a during COVID and there's a post-COVID thinking I've done on this. Right now, during COVID, incidentally, I am hoping that I can get a seat on the reverse evacuation flight to one of the destinations abroad for a very personal reason, and that is going to hopefully when I finish this that will be confirmed. But post-COVID, I mean, what one wanted to see in flying was really more comfort, broader seats. Even I'm talking about economy class, whereas airlines have been pushed and pushed and pushed to narrow the seat and reduce the comfort. Incidentally, the safety of flying is not just about all that I said. The air is also much better, much better than if you were to take any other mode of transport, unless of course you got to open in a train, you open the windows. What I'd like to see, first thing is, like good Indians, I'd like to get my idli sambar rather than get whatever they dole out as breakfast. But more than that, I think there has to be more space for. It is not good to sit and fly all the time. It is health wise not good. You have to have more space. You have to be able to walk around, and therefore obviously that 5 rupees per our RASK, it is called, revenue per average available seat kilometer, can't stay at 5. It has to go to 7, 8 perhaps, and that's what I'd like to see: more comfort, more space, better and curated food and fresh food, especially long journeys.
Bhaskar, will you be flying Vistara? I know it's a personal thing, but when you go overseas in the near future?
No, Vistara fly. We've got a Dreamliner, but it can't fly yet overseas. So it will be Zindabad, Hamara Air India.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. One last question. We're running really late here, and Dr. Tharoor has called me 11 times saying he wants to be on air. He loves the program.
Wow. He calls you?
Yeah. Just for no reason. Sometimes crank calls. Yeah. A quick question. I'm sure you've thought about this, so let me just frame this correctly. Obviously, people will be more comfortable, I think, in the near future with the domestic travel circuit, and not so much with, going abroad. A lot of people will be a little worried with the longer flights, as you mentioned, no food, water, etc. So, are you guys going to do something special in terms of domestic travel? Are you going to really go for that market now?
Yes, it is growing faster than international travel. It's growing rather faster. And what the government has done itself is going to trigger that, because the airports, the smaller town airports are now being cranked up in terms of the ability to take on the larger jets and so on. And Indigo, I mean the airlines have so many aircraft. They are flying so they have actually opened up, and I'm saying it's a great service that they've done to the country as well as to aviation as an industry. Opened up the airports have opened up, aircraft are available. It is reasonable price. Sometimes I'll just ask you to check when everything comes down. The Rajdhani ticket price between Bombay and Delhi is sometimes higher than low-cost carriers. Many times lower. I mean, 17 hours versus 3 hours, imagine. So that's the kind of service, and it's going to only increase. And that is where the rest, which is leisure and hospitality, is going to gain if people will travel in India. And of course, we have to go to Tirupati and, Banaras and Poorvi and Thiruvananthapuram, where the next speaker comes from.
Looks like I'm not the only comic on the panel. On that note, as we go into a quick break, I just want to say what a lovely moment this is, because the cutthroat aviation industry actually, coming together and being friends. There's hope for humanity. I mean, this is beautiful to hear all this. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us, Bhaskar and Gyan, and thanks for everything that you've said so far. We want you all to come back once we have a little discussion with Dr. Tharoor, which will be on the other side of this small break that we're going to take. Lots to talk about. And people have given you a number. I hope it's flashing somewhere, and hope you want WhatsApp as quickly as possible and ask anything you want of the Member of Parliament, as well as Bhaskar and Gyan, including how much they earn, how much they spend, and how much cash for profit. No, I'm just kidding. That's silly. Yeah. Yes, Poorvi, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to give out the number, Cyrus. It's you can repeat it after me. 7899
7899
2511
2511
81.
81.
People can WhatsApp their questions.
Poorvi, I just don't want any of the males in your family to get upset. You are the first woman to give me a phone number ever so openly, and just there in front of all these August panelists. So I'm slightly disturbed, actually. I can't believe this is happening to me. Wonderful day for all of us. We're taking a quick break, folks. Stay where you are. We're going to talk to Dr. Shashi Tharoor. We're going to also get back Bhaskar and Gyan, and then we're going to hopefully get some questions from you. So we have a little left in the show. Please come back. We're taking a quick break for about 2 or 3 minutes.
Cyrus, you need to start.
Ready?
Yes. You
All
need
right.
your cues.
Welcome back. This is me, just being fired by everybody for no reason whatsoever. They're not even family, can you believe it? But we run a little late. Dr. Shashi Tharoor has been waiting, so we won't waste time. I'll introduce him. Delighted to welcome our renowned Member of Parliament from Kerala, former Under Secretary General of the United Nations. Dr. Tharoor also serves as Chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology. That's who they stand. And the All India Professional Congress. In 2019, Shashi Tharoor received the Sahitya Academy Award for his book, An Era of Darkness. That darkness continues today, apparently. Tharoor is an acclaimed writer, having authored 19 best-selling works of fiction and non-fiction, and is about to launch 2 new books. if time permits, we'll get a word on that as well. He's also the author of hundreds of columns and articles in publications such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, Newsweek, the Times of India, the Indian Express, the Hindu, and many, many more. And unlike me, he gets paid for the articles. Dr. Tharoor has many, many more achievements to his credit, but we don't want to waste his time. We want to get right into it. Dr. Tharoor, welcome to this wonderful panel. We've been doing lots of great work so far. Everybody's had a lot of time. Everybody's spoken too much, frankly. So let's see if brevity is the soul of wit as we go forward. The first question, are you ready? Are you warm? Are you good to go?
I think so, yes. The sound goes in and out, but we'll hope that the Indian bandwidth holds up for the evening. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, I've got my thesaurus on standby, so I'm ready for your answers. I'll be doing my thing on the side as well. The first question, Dr. Tharoor, virtual events are here to stay, but we're tired of this word webinar. Now, with your command over the English language, some say you wrote at least 30% of the language. Could you give us another word? Because this is just bandied about.
That's amusing, Cyrus. I mean, frankly, what is a webinar? It's an internet conference or an internet conversation or an internet discussion, right? So, I mean, the only possibilities would be something around that. So, netcon, but that sounds like a confidence trickster or something. You could have a netcussion. Or we could go the Desi route, and since we're all far away from each other in virtual reality, we could call it Doordarshan.
Aha! I like Doordarshan. Penning it down.
There is Cyrus on Doordarshan, right? Doing a fun ki baat.
There you go. Oh, Kriya Gyan DJ, this is not a panel for political posturing. But go ahead in the spirit of good comedy. The story of migrants. Now we're going to go a little more serious, Dr. Tharoor, and you've done a lot of good work, so we'd like to just talk about that. The story of migrants, both within India and outside, has been heart-wrenching. Your role in bringing back Indian nationals from the Gulf has been very prominent. So could you just give us a little bit of insight, sort of thing on what worked and how you did it, and share maybe an episode or so about what touched you when you were, in the middle of this perhaps most important job for any politician?
Right. Well, there are all sorts of problems, and certainly for me as a member of parliament from Kerala and from the capital of Kerala, I had this unusual difficulty, unusual for other parts of the country perhaps, but not so in Kerala, of constituents scattered around the world and stuck. So you had, I was inundated, and I still am, by the way, with messages from people, fishermen stuck in Iran, students stuck in Ukraine, ordinary sort of charitable workers stuck in Haiti. We had businessmen who'd gone to Singapore and Malaysia, and suddenly the flights were cancelled. There was an enormous change in the realities of people's daily lives. And of course, while we locked down, so did many of their countries. Now, whereas people in some of the developed world had the kind of facilities they felt they needed to cope with the crisis, certainly people stuck in some of these countries that I mentioned to you, as well as some of the really poorer developing countries, they were extremely anxious and desperate to get back. But India had suspended all international flights. And so it was quite a job for all of us. Certainly for me, the challenge was working with the central government, that is the foreign minister and the civil aviation minister. And let me tip my hat to them, even as an opposition MP, and say they were really models of responsiveness and cooperation. Then working with the state government, I have to explain to people that as a Congress MP, I'm actually in opposition in both places. In the state, it's the communists who are in power, and the center, it's the BJP who's in power. So it was an interesting exercise in across the aisle cooperation. But everything came together at the end, and I'm proud to say that we've been able to repatriate a lot of people who were getting rather desperate where they were. And there were lots and lots of cases. But if you want me to mention one anecdote, I think it would not be so much about an inward migration, but a very unusual case that I was confronted with when a constituent who was herself out of the area said that she was in another Indian city. she said that she had a small daughter with a very rare kind of cancer, a rare blood disease, a form of leukemia, for which the only known possible cure was an experimental treatment in the Netherlands. But that required them to test her blood for a genetic variation that they could then treat. And that meant that the blood sample had to be gotten to the Netherlands. Now, this is all very well. They planned to do everything, and suddenly the lockdown happened, flights were cancelled, and there was nothing they could do. And at the same time, of course, they couldn't take the child because there was no way of going. They couldn't send the blood sample. And the test had to be run before the child turned 2, or it was too late. And the child's second birthday is in June. So this is in April this happens. And I have to say, I spoke to the Civil Aviation Minister, Hardeep Puri. I spoke to the Foreign Affairs Minister, Jayashankar. I said, this is a purely humanitarian thing. There's nothing else to this. Can we as India rise to the occasion? And I have to say, they were both magnificent. They came through. We had the blood picked up from the hospital in the town where the child was. The blood was taken by road to the nearest airport from which an evacuation flight was being flown of foreign nationals. I think it was from Mumbai airport. The blood then got to Europe, but not to the Netherlands. There, one of the Indian embassy staff took the blood and rushed by road to the Netherlands and got it to the institute in time. And to my mind, this was an example of just human beings coming together to save another human being in distress. And it gave me a lot of hope that our system, which is often portrayed, and justifiably so, as unfeeling and careless and forgetful of the needs of ordinary human beings and migrant workers, that somehow we could come together if all the pieces fell in place and help an innocent, ordinary human being, in this case, a not yet 2-year-old child.
Yep, these are the good stories, Poorvi, about politicians we don't hear.
Yeah,
we only hear about bribery, corruption, and slapping people in public. But this is lovely. You have a question?
Very touching, Dr. Tharoor. I attended one of your other Doordarshan sessions when you were speaking with one of the excellencies from the Gulf region. And in that Doordarshan session, you spoke that deglobalization, which people are talking about, could have a negative impact on India. Could you please share with this group what you meant by that, please?
Well, Poorvi, there's an increasing concern that we are now finding that COVID-19 will inaugurate an era of deglobalization. By that, I mean quite simply that we're living in a world where, most unfortunately, a lot of countries are turning more isolationist and more protectionist. The pandemic has confirmed for many countries that in times of crisis, people rely on their own governments to shield them. The global supply chains are vulnerable to disruption and are therefore unsustainable. The dependence on foreign countries for essential goods, such as pharmaceuticals, even the ingredients that go into making them, can be fatal. Everyone, for example, discovered suddenly that most of the stuff that goes into making pharmaceuticals or even importing comes from China. Even India imports the ingredients from China. Now, nations tried aggressively to acquire medicines and supplies for their own people at the expense of each other. There's a rush to reset global supply chains and to raise trade barriers. People are saying, why should we be in a position where one of our key industries is crippled because an essential part is made in another country which is under lockdown? That happened when China was the first country to go under lockdown. The demand for more protectionism and self-reliance has been echoed in Mr. Modi's call for Atmanirbharta and for bringing manufacturing and production value chains back home, or at least closer to home. Now, along with all of this, the global flow of capital and investments might slow down, multi-border pipelines and energy grids might slow down. International travel already has been suspended. There are no more ideas of free and open borders. Even the Schengen in Europe no longer holds. They've shut down all the Schengen borders. Everything, all these old assumptions that we were living with until February or March have now become vulnerable in the post-COVID era. Remember that the world economy that had thrived since globalization began in 1980 and that was the economy we integrated into after our liberalization in 1991, rested on an open system of free trade. Now, that had already been shaken by the financial crash of 2008-9 and the American trade war with China under Trump in more recent years. But with the coronavirus, exports are falling everywhere. Indications are that world goods trade may shrink by 10 to 30% this year, if not more. And then people are saying, let's decouple. So decoupling from China is being talked about. Japan, for instance, has set aside $2.25 billion in incentives for Japanese companies to pull out of that country. And that in turn means that without inexpensive Chinese labor and subsidized inputs, the era of cheap globalized goods may be over for us too. But what's the bigger challenge? COVID-19 has convinced many in many countries that foreigners are to be feared, that strict border and immigration controls are essential, that countries cannot always expect useful help from their neighbors and allies, and that national interests should trump international cooperation. Our model rested a lot on exporting our skills, our talent. We had people going on H-1B visas to America. Are they going to be able to go in those kinds of numbers? We had people exporting their talent, their skills, and at home they were doing business process outsourcing and offshoring, all sorts of activities which may now be repatriated back to other countries. In India too, meanwhile, the answer is seen as strong government. Put the nation's needs over individual citizens' freedoms or companies' profits. Dispense with democratic niceties, whether it's federalism, which has been ridden roughshod over, whether it's parliamentary oversight, which essentially has been impossible to conduct for the last 2 months. So all of this means that both domestically and globally, I think this era of deglobalization is going to cause us a lot of problems. That's what I meant, Poorvi, with what I was saying. And I have to say that the question of other things should also be in our mind. Racial discrimination. Many of us have got WhatsApp messages about people who look Chinese being discriminated against in Western supermarkets and things like that, thrown out of such places. Mm-hmm. Well, in our own country, some of our Northeastern brothers and sisters have faced incidents because of their supposedly Chinese features. And look what happened to our Muslim fellow citizens because of the careless decision by the Tablighi Jamaat to hold a major gathering. Well, others held major gatherings, but no one demonized anybody else. The atmosphere created by the virus has empowered those who seek to spread another contagion, that of communal hatred and bigotry. So in the sort of mega shock that the COVID-19 pandemic has been to the entire world and the entire global system, I think we too are going to suffer.
Mr. Tharoor, I would like to just point out this was a 14-minute answer and it has covered all the questions that we had for you in one monologue. So you do get the prize. But there's a little elephant, small elephant in the room, perhaps a wrong analogy for the day and what happened in Kerala recently. But just to be clear, so you're not a fan of deglobalization whatsoever, and you're saying it's ridiculous and it cannot be, and the world cannot exist without everybody holding hands.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, that old line in American politics when Rodney King was beaten, I mean, can't we just all get along? Can't we all just get along? I mean, take an example like the WHO. The Americans have announced they're pulling out of WHO. Well, what is the World Health Organization for? It's an organization that's meant to protect everybody's health across the world. So instead of actually pulling out, we should be strengthening an organization like WHO, giving it more independence and autonomy to challenge what's going on in individual member states. But instead, we are seeing sovereignty being reasserted, treaties and trade agreements being questioned. Multilateralism itself could be the next casualty. Imagine that entire international system that was so painstakingly constructed after World War II, unraveling because of this crisis. Instead of strengthening the capacity of global institutions to cope with future crises, the world's reaction to the virus looks like destroying the very fundamental feature it has exposed, which is the idea of our common humanity. So I must say that I'm very, very concerned about all that, because a country like India, right from Nehru's Tryst with Destiny speech, has always believed that the problems of the world are too closely knit together for countries to pursue them alone. We really need to work in cooperation. And that's going to be a major casualty, I think, which is not going to help us or anybody else.
So Cyrus,
Right.
I had a request here. If we could invite the other panelists back, because we want to get Dr. Tharoor to his movie as soon as possible.
Right.
And
Which
there
movie
are-
is it, Dr. Tharoor?
I'm sorry, what I didn't.
Guys,
Which
the other
movie?
panelists are going to be on.
Okay.
Just want to know the name of the movie as we invite Bhaskar and Gyan back on the panel. Dr. Tharoor, are you there with us?
Sorry, Cyrus, I didn't actually hear the question. The sound was going in and out.
Oh, that happens
Maybe
with
it's
anyone
my
around
end.
me.
Can you tell me?
Yeah. I just want to know
No,
the name
I have
of
a
the
good
picture.
Sarkari broadband.
Sorry? I think we're almost like
I have
the
a good Sarkari broadband from MTNL, so it ought to be working well.
Fair enough. So much for Desi. We'll have to move back to globalization. Let's invite Bhaskar and Gyan. Thank you for being patient and joining the panel now. Poorvi, Dr. Tharoor is in a hurry, so we need to get to the questions.
I have a question for him. May I?
Please.
Yeah. So this is from a concerned youth, Dr. Tharoor, and it has come in through the WhatsApp chat that we are running for questions. And the question is that the United States is not the only country where we have racism and atrocities. We have them in India as well. However, there are many personalities, many people from the entertainment industry, etc., who have thought it appropriate to tweet on Black Lives Matter, but have not been very vocal about what is happening in India. Do you think it is because we just don't care? Or is it just the ignorance is bliss? Because I don't know in this WhatsApp world how they can be ignorant about these things. Why do you think we are behaving how we are?
Jaundice selective crusade.
You know, frankly, yeah, your guess is as good as mine. It's a very difficult question to answer because when I read people saying it shows that fundamentally we don't care, we are an indifferent people, we're a selfish people, we only live for ourselves and so on, I don't want to believe that because I'd like to think that given that the kinds of social problems we all live amongst, the suffering we see around us and the solutions we're all capable of bringing to bear, I'd like to believe that we would act differently and that we can do differently. But you're quite right. The kind of nationwide protests that we have seen in America, we saw over the CAA, at least in urban India, but we have not seen over the migrant lives and the horrible deaths. And you realize that about 200 people, migrants, have died just trying to get home, either collapsing out of exhaustion and dying in the heat, dying out of starvation on the road, or being run over by trucks and trains. We're looking at a human tragedy that ought to have really got us out protesting. But partly because of the lockdown and the very strict enforcement of the lockdown, and partly perhaps because somehow those with the energy, the means, the wherewithal to protest have chosen to protest on places like social media and WhatsApp rather than out on the streets as the American kids have. That seems to be the one plausible explanation. But I don't have any better answer, and that's why I said your guess is as good as mine. Why is it that we aren't out there when these outrages are happening? The Americans have turned their country inside out over one death. We've had 200 migrant deaths, and we haven't done anything like that.
Reason to be ashamed. Cyrus, over to you, please. Sorry, I had to ask that.
No, I have a different take on this slightly, and that's I'm an animal lover, and I have to face people saying, "Why don't you help humans all the time?" I don't like this hierarchy of compassion and empathy. I frankly, I think we spend too much time with that, making a judgment call. I mean, you feel for people, you feel for people. You feel for animals, you feel for animals. You can't sit down and clinically, mathematically look at it as a graph and say, okay, first this, then that, like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of motives. So that's me. But I do take what Dr.
No, you're right. But interestingly, Cyrus, this tragedy of the pregnant elephant who ate the firecracker-laced pineapple has actually occasioned an extraordinary amount of outrage that I personally have received over 300 messages from around the world and all around the country, including from Bollywood actresses I'd never met or heard of, saying, do something about this, it's outrageous. I haven't received anything comparable, not that I'm in a position to do anything about it, but I haven't received anything comparable on the migrant lives. I agree with you about hierarchies of compassion, but just that compassion should be offered to human beings as well as to elephants. I feel terrible about that elephant, but I also feel terrible about these. I mean, that picture of that child lifting the shroud of his dead mother and asking her to wake up. I mean, that breaks your heart, Cyrus.
But maybe Bhaskar and Gyan can come in on this as well, because the entire migrant thing is linked to us, the upper middle class and the urbane, because ultimately they're working for you in some way or form, or through certain levels and layers being for you or your people or your ilk. So in a sense, maybe we've messed it up also, in terms of people wanting to go home, paranoia, fear, a rush, whatever. So I do think that the whole migrant thing, the ball stops with us in a sense.
Yeah, well, I have a view on that. Leave the migrant labor is one segment. But if you look around in Bombay itself, there are daily wage workers, daily wage earners, the Kamwali Bai, for example. I mean, all of us, especially the RWAs and the gated communities, the way they have treated them, and it's shocking that vigilantes have sprouted all over everywhere. Bangalore is the same, and they are now saying we are above the law, and even we can walk into an individual house. I'm talking about the Kamwali Bai, whereas they're not allowed. And what happened? And they don't look after them. They're daily wage workers. So we are as much to blame. The migrant labor, of course, was all over on TV, but there are daily wage earners, all of them. And yeah, go on.
Sorry, so your point is absolutely correct, which is it's the building societies and those types of people who are worse than the government.
And they are like you and me, no?
The most fascist people I've ever met with the people around me in my lane right now. I mean, they're correcting you and, going berserk with their paranoia and trying to be, one up on everything and telling the Kamwali Bai to, disappear. And where does she go? What, as you said, doesn't earn 3-4 days. Where does she go? What does she do? What's the next step? They should them all out. So, but I think it's time for us to take more questions. Poorvi is looking at me like I'm a Kamwali Bai who needs to be thrown out.
I think there's a question for Gyan. Do you think that in the post-COVID world, the talent shortage will further exacerbate because the available skill profiles may not necessarily match organizations' current and future requirements? Especially because highly skilled talent is expected to be retained even during downsizing. Sorry, it's a long question.
Okay. No, but I think it's already happening, Poorvi. And, if you look at capability trends, labor trends, they tend to be very long-term, 20, 30 years and more. And these are just speed bumps. They don't fundamentally change the direction in the way the world works with its capability set. It's a global talent pool. But I might add that, earlier we discussed about how work is changing. And I think for me, the bigger risk is some of us aren't challenging our assumptions enough as labor, as talent. The way we'd like to work, the way we've been comfortable working. We have to get out of our comfort zones. And human inertia is much more of an issue. In the previous question, I think it is fear, which is a bigger problem than even the virus at times. In this case, I put the responsibility on us that, it's important that we look at the world very differently and then retool ourselves for the future. Organizations will always need smart people. Organizations will always value, value creating capability.
Great, thank you.
All right. Can we squeeze in one more, Dr. Tharoor? Or you have time for 2 minutes?
Sure.
All right, quickly. Poorvi, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so one is, I want tips on how to improve my language. You just saw I struggled with that word. So that's my first request. Give me some tips. And the second is, can you tell us about your 2 new books that are coming? We'd like to know more, and the audience would also.
Thank you, Poorvi. Well, on language, I really have one very simple piece of advice to everyone who asks that question. Just read. the more you read, the more words you'll pick up. And it doesn't mean reading with a dictionary by your side. I'm convinced that if you read the same word in 3 different places in 3 different contexts, you'll not only understand the meaning of the word, you'll understand its usage, its nuances very easily. That's pretty much how I acquired my vocabulary, by reading widely and indiscriminately from a young age, and reading, of course, above my age level, which is what helps you to improve. There's no point reading stuff that doesn't challenge you. But it's a great way of acquiring a vocabulary in any language. And I remember when I was learning French, for example, I decided that I would go back to my childhood and pick up the Tintin or Tintin, as the French said, and the Asterix comics in French, and see if I could understand them. And it was a great way of actually enjoying myself, reliving my childhood, and actually improving my French. So reading is the simple answer. On the 2 new books, I was actually in the process of finishing a book for Penguin when the lockdown and the COVID thing hit us. And that's actually a fairly lighthearted, illustrated book called Tharoorosaurus. We wanted a book that combined my name with a Tyrannosaurus that everyone's terrified of, and a thesaurus that Cyrus insists on carrying with him when he meets me. And that book, the Tharoorosaurus, was supposed to come out in March. We finished it in March. It was going to be delayed till May. Now it's going to be delayed till whenever the publishers can get back to normal post-COVID. But I used the lockdown time to work on, and I've made a lot of progress on much more sort of substantive magnum opus on nationalism, which is a subject that I think is of immense importance and interest to all of us in India, given that we have a government that's been trying to revive the theme of nationalism, but also redefine it, and in many ways to sort of claim sole proprietorship of it. So it's a book that discusses the very concepts and ideas of nationalism globally to begin with, then brings it down to the so-called idea of India, the kind of nationalism that emerged from our anti-colonial struggle and the nationalism reflected in our constitutional practice, and then today's alternative idea of nationalism and where we're heading. So it's a fairly substantive book. I've tried to make it accessible by throwing in a lot of anecdotes, stories, incidents from my own life and my own experiences at the UN and elsewhere. So I hope it'll be more readable than I've just made it sound. But we should have that out before the end of the year. I've made a fair bit of progress on it when I'm not webinaring during the lockdown.
So they both sound very exciting, and we wish you all success with them, and we hope you get another award for it, maybe a Sahitya Academy or anything that you desire.
Oh, thank you.
Anything that the present government is willing to bestow on you, which apparently is not coming.
Well, maybe one of the international awards. Why not?
I don't think this government will be very keen on that.
But perhaps, Dr. Tharoor, when Parliament in session, maybe you could suggest words like democracy.
I see Mr. Bhat is back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we go into issues of democracy,
egalitarianism, humanity, words like that, from different contexts. But we'll save that for another day.
There's a lot of that we have to go into.
Yeah.
And identity as well is another word that we go into. But I see Mr. Bhat is back. And, I had actually spoken to to members of his board some time ago about getting flights started to Trivandrum. I just wanted to hope that as soon as possible, Vistara will be flying to Trivandrum again, because we need to get that connection back.
आपके मुंह में घी शक्कर, sir.
Now you are speaking like the politician. He's speaking like the industrialist.
Yeah. Certainly.
Anyway,
right.
So Mr. Bhat has shared a comment on our little internal chat, which says, "Get the money in the hands of the people, and the people will start spending, and Vistara will continue to fly and to Trivandrum." So, Cyrus, I think we should call it a wrap.
We call it a wrap. I just want to thank and quickly mention what a lovely panel this is, and I'm not being sarcastic in any way, because I was just thinking, Gyan will take care of my career and industry and where you're going forward, how to navigate life. Bhaskar will take care of travel, one of the most important things in the modern world. Poorvi is our lawyer, and when it comes to influence, gosh, so it's all working very well for me. So very pleasant evening. Jokes apart, thank you so much. Let's do more of these discussions. And as we thank each one individually, Poorvi, Gyan, Bhaskar, and Dr. Tharoor, thank you, extremely thank you, if that's the right English, extremely thank you. Better pay tuition. But we will end.
I also want to say thank you,
Yeah.
Cyrus. I want to thank you all, to you especially, for making it a lively discussion. And I want to thank Dr. Tharoor and apologize for our delay. Thank you, Gyan and Mr. Bhat, and also the Chambers of Commerce that supported us. Thank you.
Right. Poorvi, and of course, you're the brainchild behind all this. Let's not leave you out. But we have a formal thank you, Mani Sampath, who's, I hope, had few, and by few, I mean lassi or whatever is allowed by the government, to give us, take us out of this entire webinar, Dr. Tharoor. Called a webinar, I'm told. Doordarshan. Mr. Sampath.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And we have reached the end of today's discussion, and my hearty congratulations to all of you for making this webinar a grand success. I am honored and lucky to have the opportunity to vote of thanks for this special event. Firstly, Dr. Tharoor and all other presents, please excuse me as I will not be using any of the exotic words from the voluminous Tharoorian vocabulary to propose my vote of thanks. Friends, all of us will believe that in the past 70 days and more, the media has written and said a lot about the migrants issue, both in the blue collar and white collar jobs. But today's discussion was fascinating, insightful, and very thought-provoking. The panelists covered all the issues in the crisis from the perspective of a lot of different sectors and industries. What I particularly liked about Dr. Tharoor's presentation was when he mentioned that the migrants issue everyone on an equal footing. Additionally, he also mentioned about the humane side of our full system, and what he mentioned was very special. And otherwise, we would have never known about this, as it would have never been reported in the press. The way in which he explained the subject and other economic aspects of the extraordinary situation was exemplary. We express our gratitude to you, sir, for spending your time and evening with us, and we are grateful to you, and please accept our warm appreciation and a virtual applause. Further, I, on behalf of all three sister hosting organizations and all of you present here today, would like to propose a very hearty and well-deserved vote of thanks to all our panelists, Poorvi, Mr. Bhaskar Bhat, Mr. Gyan Nagpal, and wonderfully moderated by our friend Cyrus. And Cyrus, I hope you have not in your shorts and you worn a full pant today. All of you were brilliant and spoke their hearts out from different practical experience and business understanding on human resources as an important factor for any economic activity. A big thank you to all of you to have made today, and for the benefit, your thoughts were really a benefit to all of us. I would like to thank the Western Region President of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce and my very dear friend Naushad to put this together and offer us to co-host this event. And finally, friends, a big thank you to all of you to participate in big numbers and making this event a grand success. Good night, take care, stay safe. We'll meet again. Bye.